Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadiri Nashtuprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, The Advent of Lord Krishna, Introduction, text 43 onwards. Jyotir yathavo tak parthashveshvada samir veganugatam vibhavyate evam samaya rachiteshvaso puman guneshu raganugato vimoyati. So Vasudevji is further speaking to Kansa, trying to pacify, giving him philosophy. When the luminaries in the sky, such as the moon, the sun, and the stars, are reflected in liquids like oil or water, they appear to be of different shapes, sometimes round, sometimes long, and so on, because of the movements of the wind. Similarly, when the living entity, the soul, is absorbed in materialistic thoughts, he accepts various manifestations as his own identity because of ignorance. In other words, one is bewildered by mental concoctions because of agitation from the material modes of nature. So which he is not, but he starts thinking this is bewildered. This verse gives a very good example by which to understand the different positions of the eternal spiritual soul in the material world and how the soul takes on different bodies, Dehantara Prapti. The moon is stationary and is one, but when it is reflected in water or oil, it appears to take different shapes because of the movements of the wind. Similarly, the soul is the eternal servant of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. But when put into the material modes of nature, it takes different bodies, sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, a dog, a tree, and so on. By the influence of Maya, the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity thinks that he is this person, that person, means the wind is blowing and the living entity is thinking of different things. It's wind is blowing and the reflection in the oil or water of the same moon looks different. The same thing here. This is called Maya. When one is freed from this bewilderment and understands that the soul does not belong to any shape of this material world, one is situated on the spiritual platform. This realization is sometimes explained as Nirakar or formlessness. This formlessness, however, does not mean that the soul has no form. The soul has form, but the external agitating form he has acquired because of material contamination is false. Similarly, God is also described as Nirakar, which means that God has no material form, but is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Satchidananda Vigraha, but his material forms are temporary or illusory. Both the living entity and the Supreme Lord have original spiritual forms, Satchidananda Vigraha, but the Lord, the Supreme, does not change his form. So as a spirit soul, we don't change our form, but this material form we get a covering on the spiritual form. When the living entity receives these different forms, he identifies with them and not with this original spiritual form. As soon as the living entity returns to his original spiritual form and understanding, he immediately surrenders to the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmana Mante Gyanvan Mam Prapatyate. When the living entity, after many, many births in different forms, returns to his original form of Krishna consciousness, he immediately surrenders unto the lotus feet of the supreme form, Krishna. This is liberation. So this is what it is. We all have a spiritual form. So the spirit soul, it's called 1/10,000th part of the tip of the head. The size is called that, but form, it has a form. What is that form? We don't know. So that will be revealed, or that will come on it. I mean, that will be come to its real manifestation when we are spiritually evolved, spiritually progressed. Till then, we have to continue with our, or even after that, we continue with our devotion service. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotion service unto me. Surrender unto the Supreme Form is the result of bhakti. This bhakti, or understanding of one's own position, is a complete liberation. As long as one is under an impersonal understanding of the absolute truth, he is not in pure knowledge, but must still struggle for pure knowledge. Kleshodiktarastation. Although one may be spiritually advanced, if one is attached to the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, one must still work very hard, as indicated by the words kleshodikara, which means great suffering. A devotee, however, easily attains his original position as a spiritual form and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his original form. So this is what devotional service does. Krishna himself explains the forms of the living entities in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he clearly says to Arjuna that he, Arjuna, and all of the living entities who were previously in the original forms are separate individual identities. They were individuals in the past, they are now situated in individuality, and in the future they will all continue to maintain their individual forms. The only difference is that the conditioned living entity appears in various material forms, whereas Krishna appears in his original spiritual form. Unfortunately, those who are not advanced in spiritual knowledge think that Krishna is like one of them, and that his form is like their material forms. Avajananti mam muda. Krishna says that those who don't know when he descends in a manushim form or a human-like form, those who are fools, they don't understand him. Krishna is never puffed up by material knowledge and is therefore called Achyuta, whereas the living entities fall down and are agitated by material nature. This is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entities. In this connection, it is to be noted that Vasudeva, who was situated in a transcendental position, advised Kansa not to commit further sinful activities. Kansa, a representative of the demons, was always ready to kill Krishna or God, whereas Vasudeva represents a transcendently situated person to whom Krishna is born. Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva. So Vasudeva wanted his brother-in-law Kansa to refrain from the sinful act of killing his sister, since the result of being agitated by material nature would be that Kansa would have to accept a body in which to suffer again and again by committing this sinful act. But Kansa, being of demoniac proposition or inclination, he won't listen. So Vasudeva, as Prabhupada said, Vasudeva represents a transcendently situated person to whom Krishna is born. So that's why yesterday when we were discussing about Shuddha Sattva, that Shuddha Sattva platform, which is beyond Sattvagun, material Sattvagun, is spiritual or transcendental. And that platform is also called Vasudeva Sattva. So Vasudeva Sattva platform is that platform wherein Krishna appears. Krishna does not appear in material Sattvagun. He only appears in spiritual or transcendental Sattvagun. So that's why that Vasudeva Sattva is also Shuddha Sattva. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam, Rishabdev also says, Na sadhu manne yat atmanoya. As long as a living entity is entangled in the fruitive activities of so-called happiness and distress, he will receive a particular type of body in which to endure three kinds of sufferings due to material nature. Tritapa yantrana. An intelligent person, so three kinds of sufferings, adidevik, adibhatik, adhyat. An intelligent person, therefore, must free himself from the influence of the three modes of material nature and revive his original spiritual body by engaging in the service of the Supreme Person, Krishna. As long as one is materially attached, he must accept the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. One is therefore advised that an intelligent person, instead of being entangled in so-called good and bad fruitive activities, should engage his life in advancing in Krishna consciousness, so that instead of accepting another material body, he will return home back to God. So this is the sum and substance of the whole devotion process, whole yoga thing. That don't get into pious or impious activities, go beyond that. Because whether we get a body in Sattvagun in the material world or Tamagun or Rajagun, we are still in the material world. And we will commit both sinful and pious activities here. And we'll get the reactions next life. So what's the point? But we still will be here, not out of it. So this is what Vasudevji is trying to tell us. Why you want to commit sinful activities? So as a Kshatriya, Vasudevji also knows Sam, Dam, Danda, Bhed. So he is trying to do this Sam thing, trying to pacify, trying to convince him. And look at the situation. Kamsa has a sword in his hand. Look at in the picture behind me. And he's ready to kill Devaki, holding Devaki's hair by his hand. And Vasudevji is trying to tell him philosophy of the spirit soul. But the whole purpose of Vasudevji is somehow to protect Devaki. And as Vasudevji's name was said here, Anak Dundubi. Anak Dundubi means when he was born, even the demigods played kettle drums, because they knew he will be the father of Krishna. So he knew Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is going to appear in my house, and somehow I have to protect Devaki for him to appear. That's all. This was his service. Tasmanna kasyachid droham achret satatha vidaha atmana kshemam anvichan drog dhurva parato bhayam. Therefore, since envious, impious activities cause a body in which one suffers in the next life, why should one act impiously? Considering one's welfare, one should not envy anyone, for an envious person must always fear harm from his enemies, either in this life or in the next. So, envious person must always fear harm. Instead of being inimical towards other living entities, one should act piously by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord, thus avoiding a fearful situation both in this life and the next. In this regard, the following moral instruction by the great politician Janakya Pandit is very meaningful. Tyaja durjan samsaragam. One should give up the company of devils, demons, and non-devotees, and should always associate with devotees and saintly persons. One should always act piously, thinking that this life is temporary, and not be attached to temporary happiness and distress. The Krishna consciousness movement is teaching all of human society this principle of becoming Krishna conscious and thus solving the problems of life forever. So this is what we are teaching everybody. But this enviousness, although Vasudevji says in this shloka, enviousness is there in the heart, and it's so difficult to get this enviousness out. Now, how is Kansa envious of Devaki? So when he heard Devaki's 8th child will be the cause of my death, means I cannot enjoy. If 8th child is going to kill me, when is he going to kill me? That they didn't tell them. They didn't say as soon as he's born, he will kill you. But the 8th child will kill me. As if Kansa is going to live forever. That was also not going to happen. So he was thinking the air child is going to kill me and it's going to stop my sense gratification. So he was angry. He was envious. How come he's going to kill me and I'm not going to enjoy? Let me kill Devaki. So his thinking was like that. So this is enviousness. She's going to enjoy and I'm not going to enjoy. So this we all have in our heart. How come he has so much knowledge and how come she has more beauty and how come he has more money and how come he has better position and how come she has a better house and this and that goes on in our mind 24 hours a day. Rather, we should be thinking somebody has anything better than me. So how merciful Krishna is on him and how much pious activities in his previous lives he must have performed or she must have performed to get this or that. So he should be happy. So he or she is better than me, I should be serving them. Simple as that. Not out of envy, but out of thankfulness, being grateful to Krishna that you have given association. Well, we become envious and then we commit sinful activities, either not by the body, either by the mind or by the words, and then we become offensive. एषा तवानुजबाला कृपणा पुत्री कोपमा हंतुम नारहसि कल्याणी इमाम त्वम दीन वत्सला. As your younger sister, this poor girl Devaki is like your own daughter and deserves to be affectionately maintained. You are merciful and therefore you should not kill her. Indeed, she deserves your affection. So Vasudevji is trying different way. Shri Shukuvacha, evam sa sambhir bhedar bodhyamanopi dharuna dhanya vartat kauravya purushad dan anuvrataha. Shukdev Goswami continued, the best of the Kuru dynasty, Kansa was fiercely cruel and was actually a follower of the Rakshasa. He could be neither pacified, terrified by the good instructions given by Vasudeva. He did not care about the results of activities, either in this life or in the next. And most of the people, they are not afraid. Why they are not afraid? Because who has seen the next life? Who cares? This is what we have now, and this is what we're going to live. That's all. Eat, drink, and be merry. And howsoever we get to eat, drink, and be merry, we'll do whatever is necessary. Nirvandam tasya tam gyatva vichintyanak dundubhi praptam kalam prativyodum idam tatrano avpadyata. When Vasudeva saw that Kansa was determined to kill his sister Devaki, he thought to himself very deeply. Considering the imminent danger, he thought of another plan to stop Kansa. Although Vasudeva saw the imminent danger, that his wife Devaki would be killed, he was convinced of his welfare because at birth the demigods had played drums and kettle drums. He therefore attempted another way to save Devaki. So he said, Mrityur buddhi matapoyo yavad buddhi balodayam yadyasto na nivarteta na aparadhosti dehna. As long as he has intelligence, his strength, an intelligent person must try to avoid death. This is the duty of every embodied person. But if death cannot be avoided in spite of one's endeavors, a person facing death commits no offense. It is natural for a person facing untimely death to try his best to save himself. This is one's duty. Although death is sure, everyone should try to avoid it and not meet death without opposition, because every living soul is by nature eternal. So we have to try to save ourselves, not just we run into death. Because death is a punishment imposed in the condemned life of material existence. The Vedic culture is based on avoiding death. Everyone should try to avoid death and rebirth by cultivating spiritual life and should not submit to death without struggling to survive. One who is not trying to stop death is not an intelligent human being, because Devaki was face to face with imminent death. It was Vasudev's duty to save her, as he was trying his best to do. He therefore considered another way to approach Kansa. Devaki would be saved. So he thought of another way. Pradaya mrit putran moche kripnam imam sutame yadi jayeran mrityurvan mriyachet viparyayo va kimna syam gatir dhatur duratyaya upasthito nivarteta nivrita punarapate. Vasudev considered, by delivering all my sons to Kansa, whose death personified, I shall save the life of Devaki. Perhaps Kansa will die before my sons takes birth. Though, since he is already destined to die at the hands of my son, one of my sons may kill him. For the time being, let me promise to hand over my sons so that Kansa will give up this immediate threat. And if in due course of time Kansa dies, I shall have nothing to fear. Vasudev wanted to save the life of Devaki by promising to deliver his sons to Kansa. In the future, he thought, Kansa may die, or I may not beget any sons. Even if a son is born and I deliver him to Kansa, Kansa may die at his hands. For by providence, anything could happen. It is very difficult to understand how things are managed by providence. Thus, Vasudev decided that he would promise to deliver his sons to the hands of Kansa in order to save Devaki from the imminent danger of death. So he just wanted to protect Devaki. Agner yatha daru gayo gayor drishto anyanna nimittamasti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavya sharira samyoga viyoga hetu. When a fire for some unseen reason leaps over one piece of wood and sets fire to the next, the reason is destiny. Similarly, when a living being accepts one kind of body and leaves aside another, there is no reason than unseen destiny. When there is fire in a village, the fire sometimes jumps over one house and burns another. Similarly, when there is a forest fire, the fire sometimes jumps over one tree and catches another. Why this happens, no one can say. One may set forth some imaginary reason why the nearest tree or house did not catch fire, whereas a tree or house in a distant place did. Really, the reason is destiny. This reason also applies to the transmigration of the soul, by which a prime minister in one life may become a dog in the next. So we all know who Prabhupada is referring to. The work of unseen destiny could not be ascertained by practical experimental knowledge, and therefore one must be satisfied by reasoning that everything is done by supreme providence. So that is for sure. In the meanwhile, we have to try our best to do our services properly, to live in a pious way, in a devoted way, and not commit sins. That's all. The rest, everything, whatever is destiny, it will happen. Evam vimrishya tam papam yavad atma nidarshanam pujayamas vaishorir bahumana purasaram. After thus considering the matter as far as knowledge would allow, Vasudeva submitted his proposal to the sinful Kansa with great respect, not with indignance or something. Prasanna avadnam bhojo nrishansam nirpatrapam manasa duyamanena vihasan idam abravit. Vasudev's mind was full of anxiety because his wife was facing danger. But in order to please a cruel, shameless, and sinful Kansa, he externally smiled and spoke to him as follows. So sometimes one must act dupliciously in a dangerous position, as Vasudev did to save his wife. The material world is complicated, and to execute one's duties, one cannot avoid adopting such diplomacy. Vasudeva did everything possible to save his wife for the sake of begetting Krishna. This indicates that one may act dupliciously for the purpose of saving Krishna and his interests. According to the arrangement already foretold, Krishna was to appear through Vasudeva and Devaki to kill Kansa. Vasudeva therefore had to do everything to save the situation. Although all the events were prearranged by Krishna, a devotee must still try his best to serve the purpose of Krishna. Krishna himself is all powerful, but it is not that a devotee should therefore sit idly and leave everything to him. This instruction is found in Bhagavad Gita. Although Krishna was doing everything for Arjuna, Arjuna never sat down idly as a non-violent gentleman. Rather, he tried his best to fight the battle and be victorious. Of course, when Prabhupada said one may act deliciously for the purpose of serving Krishna and his interests, this will take lots and lots of devotion and surrender, so that we have to be 100% sure that I'm trying to serve Krishna even if I'm acting deliciously. On one hand, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said, Saralta iva shunta. And devotee is very simple, very straightforward. But here, Vasudevji himself spoke in a different way, and Prabhupada's purport also points to something else. But in the heart, one should be very simple and want to serve Krishna. But sometimes we mix things up. We might say, oh, I'm trying to serve Krishna by doing this diplomacy or politics, or have duplicitous behavior, or doing things illegal or immoral. I'm trying to serve Krishna. But that one has to see what's inside his heart. I can convince myself, but can I convince Krishna? That's the thing. Devotees have done in the past, like at Sri Rangam, when Sri Rangam temple was being built, there was an Alvar, Radha Prabhu can tell his name. I always forget his name. And he was, I believe he was a dacoit before, but he became a great saint. And lots of money was required for the temple construction. So he engaged the dacoits in getting the money somehow in a crooked way for the construction of the temple. But after the temple was constructed, because he knew they have served Lord Ranganathji very nicely, but still their propensity to cheat is not gone away. So he asked them to follow him on the river. And he walked on the water, but he drowned everybody else in the process, and he killed them. Because he knew they have served Lord Ranganath so nicely, they'll go to Vaikuntha, but if they commit any more sins, they will go to hell. So he didn't want them to commit any more sins, because the inclination was not gone. So we got to be very, very careful, very careful. Vasudevji acted this way just to save Krishna and Devaki. And he knew Krishna would appear, and Krishna appeared in his house as his son. Not an ordinary person. Is Krishna appearing in our house as our son? No. So got to be very, very careful. Anyway, so we'll read tomorrow what Vasudevji had to say. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisance.
Krishna, please accept my.
Prabhuji, when we say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, so the Vasudevaya and father of Lord Krishna Vasudeva, the pronunciation is same or it is little different?
Different. Krishna's father is Vasudeva. Krishna is Vasudeva.
Okay.
So Vasudeva is son of Vasudeva. So Vasudeva is Krishna.
Yes, yes. Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.